Martha Taylor Nobile is presently an English teacher at Greenwich High School. As a high school and college student, she was involved in anti-Vietnam War protests, along with many of her peers, as well as a large segment of the American population. One of the largest groups of protesters was students, as they were being increasingly liberalized and gaining personal freedom. The largest reason as to why they began to protest was the media's 24-hour coverage of the war. For the first time ever, people were exposed to images of the horrors of war via a constant stream of news media. For Miss Taylor, seeing everything that was happening on the television sparked her interest in the war and the motives of the U.S. government for being there. Many Americans like Miss Taylor grew up with John Wayne movies, in which Americans were the heroes. To see U.S. soldiers being killed and mutilated, and killing and torturing thousands of Vietnamese, made it difficult for those at home to believe in a reason to be there. In May of 1970, efforts on the part of Americans to protest the war greatly increased when U.S. troops moved into Cambodia, which had planned to remain neutral during the war between North and South Vietnam. The Communist North held supply bases in Cambodia and was posing a threat to the U.S., forcing Nixon to send men in to attack the bases and hinder the North. When Cambodia was invaded, Americans felt violated because they saw the government as an untrustworthy institution that endangers the lives of innocent people. The invasion sparked protests at Kent State University in Kent, Ohio, which were planned to be peaceful. However, they quickly turned violent as alcohol became involved, and the mayor of Kent was forced to call in the Ohio National Guardsmen to suppress the students. After 4 days of minor conflict, the Guardsmen shot and killed 4 students and injured 9 others. After the incident, hundreds of colleges closed their campuses for the remainder of the school year and sent the students home as an act of prevention. These shootings made Americans like Miss Taylor question the government and its legitimacy as a reliable institution. For her, seeing pictures of the victims and hearing about the violence that was occurring made her want to fight to protect those who were being persecuted for speaking their minds. The shootings at Kent State were extremely influential in the active role she played in the anti-war protests. Miss Taylor became involved in a number of protests, including one at Boston University in 1970. In Boston, a college town, the anti-war movement had been established long before she had arrived as a freshman. It functioned in a way that it was present all the time. As on many other campuses, Boston University organized student protests in order for the students to express their feelings regarding the war. Together, Boston University, Boston College, Northeastern, MIT, and Harvard marched down Commonwealth Avenue to the Boston Commons, where speeches were made, and there was a general sense of community among the students. From there, they moved to the Boston Government Center, where they gathered on the steps to peacefully speak out against the government. Suddenly, tactical police forces appeared with dogs and helmets, ensuring that the protest did not get out of hand. However, the guards were not necessary, as the students remained calm throughout the protest. To Miss Taylor, this ability to assemble against something as horrible as the Vietnam War, and to do so without resorting to violence, amazed her and made her feel empowered as an American. This pride was clear as a hopeful smile appeared on her face when she described and looked back on the scene of thousands of college students coming together despite any differences they may have had. This type of scene is what unified much of the country against the federal government and its policies regarding Vietnam and war in general. A large-scale example of this pride that came from being able to speak out was the moratorium, which took place in 1969 at Morris Harvey College. Nearly 2 million Americans appeared in order to protest the Vietnam War, and this enormous movement helped convince Miss Taylor and many of her peers that this cause was important to stand up for. To this day, Miss Taylor remains proud of what she accomplished, and is proud to say that she never saw anyone behave aggressively toward a policeman or a soldier because they were not protesting against an individual soldier or the military. As she says, it was against the government. There was also cause for protest because Miss Taylor was not able to vote at the age of 18, which severely limited the effectiveness of young adults nationwide. She seriously questioned the government because they could send young men to die, but did not allow them to choose who made these decisions. The anti-war protests during the Vietnam War offered Americans the chance to speak up and express how they felt about the government and its behavior. For Miss Taylor, it was fascinating to see thousands of people come together and peacefully protest actions that were so horribly violent. Despite the major division in the nation in the 1960s over the war, many Americans were able to unify themselves against the government, an event that strengthened the country more than almost any previous action.